Hey everyone, it's Tricia McCannon, and welcome to part 2 about the angelic origins of the soul, discovering your divine purpose. If you got part 1, we talked about an overview of the book and how this book is really about you and me and each one of us. I promised you I'd come back to talk to you a little bit about the mechanisms of Adi karma, which means first karma, ADI, and the defense mechanisms that the ego uses to keep us, asleep at the wheel, basically. And many times we do feel asleep at the wheel. It's amazing how we can feel so brilliant and clear about some things and so muddled and confused about others, isn't it? So the 3 laws of Adi karma really are a mechanism that, let us say, spirit uses in order to allow us to come down into the 3rd dimension and experience ourselves as separate. Of course, in the 3rd dimension, there's free will. So the whole point of this process is for us to choose of our own free will, to awaken out of the dream of being separate from one another and choose of our own free will to reconnect with a more unified consciousness. Of course, if everything is God, if God is everyone and everywhere, a little spark of God resides in each and every one of us, right? In animals, in plants, in stones, in humans. And in fact, the ancients say that consciousness sleeps in the rocks, it feels in the plants, it thinks in the animals, and in humans we have an opportunity to take that feeling, thinking, being nature and move to a place of free will and conscious choice to make that higher alignment. So the 3 laws of Adi karma, would you guys like to know them? I think they're important. So the very first one, and all of us have one of these, by the way. We don't get down here without getting one of these. It's sort of like when we're up there in the higher worlds where we know that we're in unity consciousness, we say, hey, I hear it's really exciting down there on planet Earth. I hear there's sex and drugs and rock and roll. And I don't know what any of that means, but I want to go. Sign me up for that roller coaster ride. So that's what happens. We say we want to go. They say, step right up, young soul. Here's your ticket to Disney World, okay? So embedded within that ticket, which of course is the ego, is the first lie of Adi karma. So they only give us one of these to start off. And this sort of like makes us heavy enough. It's like, here, hold this anvil, and the anvil, we drop down into the worlds of duality where we start thinking that we're separate. So the very first lie, here it is, I'm not worthy to be loved by God. How many of you might have that? I think a lot of us have that one. I think that's a huge one. But you can actually make it fill in the blank. I'm not worthy to be loved by my father, by my wife, by my children, by my employees, by my, family of origin, my in-laws. Okay, you just like really fill in the blank. So this lie causes us to fall into the emotion of sadness. So you can usually figure out what your primary lie of Adi karma is by looking at your emotions. And I would just say that, we all can, they only give us one, but we can add the others as we go along, and, wounding patterns happen down here in the 3rd dimension. But the others are always a little easier to get rid of than the one that they gave us. So we always have to be very vigilant. And in my book, I actually give antidotes to each one of these so that you can sort of break through the illusion and not be, under the spell of that false belief. The second one, you guys ready for it? Number 2, I'm alone down here. How many people have that one? I'm alone down here. Now that one causes the emotion of fear. And fear is a big one for a lot of people. I'm scared to try anything new because there's nobody to back me up. I'm scared to go on vacation. I'm scared to quit that job and go for another job, but who knows what will happen. I'm scared to love again. I'm scared to trust. Fear is a pretty insidious one. And sometimes people who are, convinced really, I'll always be alone, I've always had to do it on my own, never mind, I don't really need anybody, they will tend to actually isolate because they've given up on love. They've given up on making that connection. Other people will actually be so scared of being alone and really sitting in the majesty, if you want to know the truth, of their own presence, because they have all these external voices that they've been programmed with and the internal fear. They're scared of looking inside, which of course the truth is, if you look deep enough inside, all you're going to find is God. It's pretty magnificent in there. Because of that, many times they will surround themselves with other people. They'll, be scared to be alone. They'll be the party person. They'll be the person who just marries somebody to have somebody to be there, even if it's not a right fit for them. So, I talk about different ways these can express, and I really actually give solutions for these in the book. And so I think it's very useful. The third one, ready for number 3? Okay, the third one is, I've been betrayed by God, or I've been abandoned by God. Same difference. And what's the emotion behind it? Anger. Think about it. Do you know people that have just seemed like they got up on the wrong side of the bed? I do. I mean, people who seem like they were just pissed off from the time they woke up in the morning. They kind of had a chip on their shoulder, and they were convinced other people were going to screw them over. Other people were going to do them in. Other people were reporting them, talking about them, etc., etc. Their girlfriend was going to cheat on them. The fact that someone was spending time away from them meant that, really there were forces at work to take that person away. This is all the I've been abandoned or I've been betrayed, and really the belief is by God, but a lot of times we don't realize it's that way. So we think I was abandoned by my father when I was young. I was abandoned by an emotionally unavailable parent. I was abandoned by a divorce. My father was always away in the military. My parents' divorce was horrible, and I never heard from my mother or my father or my brothers or whatever again. I was adopted. Nobody wanted me. And of course this winds up translating into, I'm afraid that I will be betrayed by my girlfriend or my boyfriend. I'll be cheated on. My best friend will tell my boss something horrible. And so, of course, these people, as you can imagine, are angry at whatever happened. And circumstances around them might actually seem to support this. That's one of the funny things about this, is that what we believe, the power of our beliefs, is the filter we see life through. And if we believe it, the world is a harsh, horrible place. The world is a loving, kind place. The world, no one can be trusted, okay? The government is all horrible. And of course we do have some evidence for these things in the world. So it's not like we're completely delusional. The question is, what is the filter we're looking through? And how do we continue to magnetize to ourselves situations where that's our takeaway? And if that's our takeaway and it's not making us happy, again, it's not working for us, is it? I mean, do you want to be right or do you want to be happy? As the Course in Miracles asked us a long time ago. If we want to be right, we can just hold on to these things. But if we want to be happy, we might decide that we want to take a look at them, even though there's plenty of evidence to support it, and figure out how to go in and turn the keys to pull back the illusion and to dispel it and see what's really going on behind the scenes. And it's certainly not about making you wrong or anybody else wrong. It's a mechanism for learning that gives you a hurdle that you must win through and get over. And if you do, of course, you become free and you become enlightened. So, of course, there are ways in which the ego, being attached to its identity down here, because the ego is very useful in the third and fourth dimension. But once we kind of get up into the fifth dimension, where we move back into that unity consciousness, the ego is not so important. So the ego is always afraid, since it's sort of a temporary aspect of ourselves. The ego is almost always afraid it's going to be annihilated. So of course it holds on tooth and nail to these old patterns. So perhaps in the next video we'll talk about the 4 defense mechanisms that the ego uses to keep itself in the world of illusion. Would you guys like that? I think so. Okay, until the next time, thanks for joining us. TriciaMcCannonSpeaks.com. Bye.